So far we've been handling light in this way. Point light source from the sun or from a spotlight that creates a strong, powerful, sharp-edged sense of light and shadow. And that's what we've been doing so far. And so our process has been something like constructing big masses, clear masses of light and shadow with sharp point light source edges with this type of rendering. But we won't spend our careers just drawing under a point light source. A lot of us will spend some time, maybe a lot of time, maybe even will have a preference for diffuse, ambient light. Light that does something like this, coming from above, if you're outside on a cloudy day, or if you're outside in the shade, or you're indoors working under a skylight. You get this type of bright but diffuse top light coming down from above. And the major differences here from what we've been doing so far is that we do not get the strong core shadow that we've been getting because we don't get a strong bounce light. This light source is not as bright as direct sunlight. You also do not get the sharp-edged cast shadows. You get a much softer, diffuse shadow. And those are the defining differences between the type of light we've been working on so far and the type of light that we get with this indirect ambient light. So under this type of light, our process would look something like this. If we draw our Riley abstraction and then we render it with ambient diffuse light from above, we would get something more like this. These upper frontal planes are illuminated, but as the forms turn under, we go to halftone and then gently curve into shadow in the deep underplanings. And if we render that out, we might get something like this. Front top planes, but as we turn away from that and turn more and more away from our top light, we get more and more halftone and then more and more shadow, going from simple light to simple dark. Very simple, very clear. And that's how these big forms wrap around from light into shadow. If we look at the artist John Singer Sargent, great John Singer Sargent, who's very reliable on looking at for value rendering, you see exactly that. This is a portrait, a study of his father under a skylight. We get this strong turning of form from above, graduating to shadow. Very similar, in fact, nearly identical to this painted sphere that we've just been looking at. We can go back and forth between the two, and you see that exact kind of ambient rendering. Back to Scott Burdick, who we started with. So here's an example. He's done a beautiful job of painting. In this case, it looks like it's a bright window, getting that soft, diffuse light. Let me give you an explanation of where you might want to use this type of lighting as opposed to the direct light we've been looking at so far, and why in fact many artists, some of the time, and a few of them much of the time, prefer diffuse light. When you're doing a vanity portrait, sometimes the strong and occasionally harsh look of direct light won't be appropriate for a portrait like that. It doesn't allow you to get some of the sensitivity and some of the rendering and some of the lightness into the features, and is completely appropriate for that type of a portrait. Also, it's assumed that even though this is a drawing class, many of you have and will paint. You'll go on from drawing to painting, and color and the temperatures of color will be an issue for you. In these indirect light sources, the temperature of your color will tend to be cool. It will be light coming down from the sky. The contrast between cool light and warm flesh tones creates a richness that a lot of artists really enjoy. They feel it brings something rich and lively and subtle to their artwork. And so they rely on this kind of indirect cool light on their warm subject. Now we're back to Morgan Weisling, artists that we've looked at as well. So these are bright, skylit paintings. And this one's a great example to look at because of the brim of the hat and what the brim of the hat does to the face with the soft light, soft diffuse edges. But take a look at, let's just zoom in here. The top planes, this plane here, the planes in the cheek, right here in the lip, in the chin, and then on his shoulder. Whenever those planes tip upward in space, they get that light, but as they start to turn down and they start to turn underneath, they just simply gradually get darker and darker. It's a very simple process to understand.